Hey, what's up, guys? It's Michael from the Honest Youth Pastor. Today, I want to expand on. I finally had time to expand on one of the memes that I posted a couple days ago, and this one got a lot of heat, a lot of comments, and I get why. I totally get why. Because initially it came off saying that, hey, you can't be a Christian and be this thing at the same time. And it came off, and I got a lot of DMs and questions about, well, isn't it justification that saves us? Like faith alone, it's not anything we do. And I would totally agree with that. I wasn't saying that the things you do either earn or keep your salvation. My point was, within the context here, Paul is telling Timothy that there are false teachers that are teaching the law incorrectly. In fact, he says that they don't even know what they're teaching. And he goes in and says, you should teach the law correctly. Starting at verse 5 at the very top here, you'll see it says, the aim of our charge is to love that love that issues from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Certain persons, by swerving from these, have wandered away to teach vain discussions, desiring to be teachers of the law without understanding either what they are saying or the things about which they make confident assertions. So basically here, they've wavered, they've strayed away, they don't even know what they're talking about. But he wants Timothy, within love and a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith, to teach these things correctly that apparently others are teaching incorrectly. He goes on in verse 8, he says, now we know that the law is good if one uses it lawfully, understanding this, that the law is not laid down for the just, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly, for the sinners, for the unholy, for the profane, for those who strike their father and their mothers, for the murderers, for the sexual immoral, for the men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine, in accordance with the gospel of the glory of the blessed God, with which we have been entrusted. I have been entrusted. Now, a bit, just based within the context here, he's telling him that, hey, the law is good if it's used lawfully. So, Timothy, I want you to use it lawfully and lay it down for those that are lawless and disobedient and ungodly and sinners. And then he lays out this list of those people that fit within that category, that the law, when it approaches these types of sin, then points those people, which at any point anybody can fall into these categories, to the gospel. And so I just want to make it clear before we get into this specific issue that I'm going to be talking about, that this isn't people that he's saying, hey, these are people that are godly. These are ungodly people. So they can't say that they're, that they understand the law whenever they are clearly disobeying the law. So if that was unclear, hopefully that clears it up. But there was one thing that people brought up within that, and they ignored everything else within the memes. Because I made a meme about essentially every one of these things that he says about, the disobedient, the ungodly, and the sinners, and the unholy and the profane. And then I went in and made a meme about essentially each of these. I didn't make one about striking your mother and father. But the rest of them I did. And the one that everybody picked up on was one that, you might, probably saw coming, probably expected. But was this one right here, the liars. There were a lot of people that came up and were like, hey, I'm born a liar. I can't stop lying. Like, it's not like I chose to be a liar. Which, it's a valid statement that you can make. But I think within this text here, Paul makes it pretty clear as he's talking to Timothy that when the law is used lawfully and it's laid down for the lawless and disobedient and the liars, right? So those that lie, regardless if you say, I was born a liar, I can't stop lying. That's, I don't see how lying is actually a sin. And that's the argument, right? I can't stop lying. I was born a liar. I can't stop lying. There are people that would also say, hey, look, I have tried to stop lying. Like, I've prayed for God to take my lying away, and he just hasn't. I just keep on lying. I have the desire to lie, and I don't think it's wrong. And that's the thing that really got picked up on here was, and let me just highlight it because I want to make sure you guys know here, like the liar thing was the thing that people really picked up on. And just so we're clear, like liars, right? I just can't stop lying. I have the desire to lie. and you can't tell me that that's a sin because I've tried to stop. And, why would God make me a liar if he didn't want me to lie? And I can still be a follower of God and lie, just flat out all the time lie. And here's the thing. I mean, that's an argument you can make, but I think that when we look at it within the context of what is being said here, along with the other list that Paul gives in other places to different churches, it's pretty clear that what he's saying is here that none of these ungodly, disobedient, unholy, profane things, there's not like one is above another, right? It's not like liars is the worst sin compared to, those who strike their mother and fathers or murderers or homosexuals or enslavers. Like, he's not saying lying is the worst thing, but for some reason, everybody picked up on the lying thing. And the question that I want to bring up here as we talk about this is, why do you think that we process, like as modern day, primarily American Christians, right? That's who a lot of people on the account follow. Why do you think that we, in that category, we're okay with saying, hey, all the rest of this stuff, of course God is not happy with, the perjurers or the enslavers or the murderers. Of course God's not. But why do we say, nah, the lying thing, I don't know. I just can't see how he'd be unhappy with liars. And I think part of it is, and this is just a question I want to throw out here to you. I think that culturally, we've been sold kind of a weird definition of what liars is, right? The rest of these, we don't necessarily attach to our identity, right? There's not like we say, hey, I can be a Christian enslaver, or I can be a Christian sexual immoral individual, or I can be a Christian murderer, or I can be a Christian homosexual, or I can be a Christian perjurer. But for some reason, when we say I can be a Christian liar, but it's like, no, I can definitely be a Christian liar. Like, that's not a problem at all. So I think what we have to see here is that culturally, on every account except this one, we see it different. And it's probably because culturally we've been sold this idea that lying's okay. People, there's enough people out there that are, as far as we can tell, they're upright, moral individuals. Somebody actually sent me a DM and said, hey, I know a lot of really moral liars. Sometimes these liars are even more moral than I am. And my response was that, okay, but morality and godliness are two different things. So maybe you do know a really moral liar, right? Maybe there's somebody out there that like obeys all the rules, volunteers at all the places, says all the right things. And the one thing that, they do this in this list is liars. But the point is that I think it's pretty clear here that when Paul's pointing this out to Timothy, that he's saying that the law, when used correctly, points out these clearly disobedient, ungodly, unholy, profane things. That if we claim to be followers of Christ, that at some point or another, we have to come up against. We have to sit down and say, look, it clearly says in Scripture, not just here, but in other places as well, that liars are considered are unholy, ungodly. And we have to sit down and say, why do I think that it's okay to identify as a liar, as part of the community of liars, and it still be okay, even though Scripture says it isn't? And it's a question you have to ask yourself. I can't answer that question for you. In fact, in many respects, it boggles my mind that we, as a Christian culture, for a pretty large percentage of the Christian culture, will totally say, hey, I affirm liars. I affirm them. I mean, look, they were born liars. They can't help being liars. And there's lots of people that have tried to stop being liars, and they just can't. So how dare you say that, that they have to stop being liars and be truth tellers when they've tried and they can't. And here's the thing I would say. It's not about trying to stop something. It's about understanding that in Paul's words here, not just Paul, but throughout the Bible, we see that when we become Christ followers, our identity, our total identity is in Jesus. And when our total identity is in Jesus and our total, we surrender to the rule and the reign of him in our lives and become kingdom people, we're not perfect right away, but we do when we come across his word, his scripture, and we are becoming his disciples. There will come across teachings that we come across that we say, oh, wow, okay, I have to deal with that. I have to do something with that. So when we come across texts like this, we have to say, well, what am I going to do with this? Can I still declare myself to be an enslaver and still be a Christian? Can I still follow Christ and be, a murderer? Can I still follow Christ and be a perjurer? Can I still be a Christ and do all the other things in this list, but we're talking about liars specifically. So can I still be a Christian and be a liar when his word specifically says in the category of ungodly, unholy, and profane that that's an issue? And let me tell you right now, I'm not telling you that this is my word and you have to listen to me. I'm just telling you have to come to the text at some point and say, what am I going to do with that? Now, on the last point here, and it was a good point that was brought up, there were a lot of people that said, well, these are Paul's words. They're not Jesus's words. Paul is calling people, ungodly, profane and unholy here that are liars, along with these other things. But liars was the big thing, right? Paul's the one saying this. So, who cares about what Paul says? Paul also condoned slavery other places, so throw his whole words out, which again he didn't, but that's a whole nother video. Jesus never flat out condoned liars. But I think if, again, you look at the totality of Scripture here, if you look at from Genesis until Revelation, you'll see that there's certain things that are laid out. That whether God directly opposes them or, whether Jesus specifically speaks on them, there are times that we come across that make it pretty obvious that every one of these things listed in this vague list here isn't part of God's plan for humanity. God doesn't want us to be enslavers or perjurers or sexually immoral or homosexual or murderers or strikers of mother and father or liars, right? There's lots of times where Jesus himself in the Gospels affirms, without really saying don't be a liar, he affirms Old Testament teaching that points back to you shouldn't be a liar. So I think this is something that really comes up to a point I said a little bit ago. This isn't about our cultural perspective on what lying is. Because our culture has attached lying to your personality. That's your identity. So whenever you, feel like you like lying, or maybe you just come out and say, I'm a liar, accept me. Culture applauds that. There's a whole group for you to fit into. There's commercials that promote lying. So we attach that to our identity, or some people attach that to our identity. Unlike these other things. And so culturally, we see it through a lens that say lying is actually separate from this. He wasn't actually either speaking of this or he meant something different than this. He meant like liars, like the ones that lie about everything. He didn't mean about just the liars that were doing it for a good reason. He meant like bad liars. The truth is, he just meant liars. If you look up the Greek word, it means liars. That's all I'm saying. So, what we have to do is, as a culture, Christian culture specifically, come to lists like these and say, look, in every place that Paul spoke, he reaffirmed or expanded and explained the things of the Old Testament and or the things that Jesus had said in the Gospels. And the overarching idea within the narrative of Scripture is that God is redeeming a people that is broken and lost, and part of that includes being liars. and bringing things back to the way that he originally had made them before we messed it all up, which also includes liars. The correction of that. So when we come across these texts, whether we like it or not, we have to deal with that. We have to deal with the fact that this is here, not only here, but other places. And that the idea throughout Scripture is that God is redeeming a fallen and broken humanity back to what it was supposed to be all along. And through Jesus, we have the ability, along with these other things in this list, to not be liars anymore. I know that's hard for some people to accept. I get it. I know a lot of people that would connect liars to their identity. And we can have back and forth discussion. Just let me tell you one thing, right? That if you're a liar, I love you. You may believe it, you may not believe it, you may think that this right here disproves my love for you. But the truth is, I do. And I'm really glad that a long time ago, somebody came up to me and said, hey, you can't hate people because hating people is like murdering them. Jesus said that on the Sermon on the Mount. You can't be sexually immoral and lust after, in my case, women, because Jesus said when you lust after a woman, you commit adultery. There's all sorts of things here that everyone can be pointed to and say, look, this is not the good and great plan Jesus has for your life. He wants to redeem you. That includes liars. Anyway, if you've gotten this far in the video and you've seen the meme on the meme page, you know right now I'm being a little sarcastic. No one jumped on me about including liars in the memes. What was included and what I got jumped all over was because I had mentioned homosexuals in the meme. But I think if you go back to this entire video and switch the word homosexual with liars, the same thing stands true. Would love to have more of a discussion with you about it, but I think that I've pretty much said everything I need to say. I'm not saying that I understand this perfectly or I get it perfectly or that we will not fall as Christians. But I think if we say as Christians, I can deliberately, purposefully do whatever I want with the things in this list and deliberately, consciously rebel against what God has clearly said, I don't know how we can call ourselves Christians. And in a very non-ironic way, using liar in the actual sense of what it says here. I cannot go out into the world and purposefully, deliberately lie to people over and over again and attach it to my identity and say that I'm a Christian. I just can't. And it's not me earning my salvation to say I'm not doing that. It's only by his power and his grace and his mercy that I'm not able to do that. Or that I'm able to not lie, rather. Hopefully this was helpful. If I didn't answer a question or you thought I was unclear on something, please leave a comment. I appreciate you watching. I'll talk to you later.